Hey guys, David here. I tried to post this video with my laptop, but my laptop sucks, so I'm going to record it on the iPhone and see if it does a better job. This video is about my experiences and the experiences of a few people that are close to me involving the Hat Man. So, for those of you who don't know, the Hat Man is I think he's considered a shadow person. It's kind of this thing that visits you. Uh, I guess when you're sleeping, some people have seen it outside of sleep. Some people have seen it, while they're just kind of living their everyday life, walking about. But typically, it's a phenomena that's associated with a disorder called sleep paralysis. I don't really know that it's a disorder, but the idea of sleep paralysis is that while you're sleeping, your body goes in a paralysis state so that you don't act out your dreams. And sometimes your mind will wake up before your body does. And that essentially is you waking up in the middle of the night and you're paralyzed. Now, someone who looks at this from a purely psychological standpoint will say that because you're paralyzed, that's one of the scariest things that can happen to you. The feeling and the idea that you're never going to move again is pretty terrifying. So because you're still sort of in a dream state because you just woke up and your body is still paralyzed, your mind projects terrifying images because you're going through a terrifying moment. So terrifying hallucinations. And the thing that's a little strange about it is that there's usually a theme. Now, there's exceptions to that theme. Some people just see wild shit, but, speaking in generalization, some people see what have been dubbed as shadow people. So those things range anywhere from small silhouettes of what seem like children, and a lot of people who experience that bring that over to the alien abduction theory, because that's usually something that they see. Small, big-headed shadow people. Usually whisk them away somewhere. But, whatever. The other thing that they see is what people have started to call the Hat Man. Now, the Hat Man is super interesting because it's like this worldwide phenomena. You find it in countries all over the world. It doesn't matter what culture or anything like that. And it has the same theme, which is why they call it Hat Man. And that theme is the silhouette of a tall man in what seems to be a duster coat and a wide-brimmed flat hat. So it kind of reminds me of like a spaghetti western type of outfit, which could be, a major contributing factor to it if it is purely a psychological issue, because spaghetti westerns, Clint Eastwood movies, they're very popular. Everyone all over the entire world has seen them. A lot of people, for a long time, kind of, if you're from another country, if I'm not mistaken, attach that imagery to Americans. Is this, this kind of southern, well, I don't know, they really kind of think we're idiots, that we're all waving Confederate flags and shit. But anyway, so it could be attributed to that image in the fact that its popularity has been spread through the media and like I said, Clint Eastwood movies and things like that. But that's pretty much it. It's this man, the silhouette of a man. Sometimes you can see his eyes. They're usually described as red. And you'll wake up from sleep paralysis and you'll see this man hovering over. And a lot of people who are potentially watching this video might have heard about this for the first time and said, holy shit, that's happened to me. So I want to share with you a little bit of my experiences. When I was growing up, there was, I don't want to say any names, especially because it's going to wind up on Facebook and I don't want people to know who the hell I'm talking about. There was an influential adult in my life who complained more or less about her experiences with what she thought was death. She thought it was death. That's what she called it. So as a child, she would wake up in the middle of the night, frozen in fear because she can't move and there's this man looming over her watching her sleep. And the way she described it to me was, this is before I had any idea what it was. I was young. Maybe a kind of an irresponsible thing to tell me about this shit. It was terrifying. So she says, she would wake up, there would be this man with a flat brim cap, and he'd be looming over you and watching you sleep. He would be unresponsive. Maybe sometimes, some people say he would laugh, but in her case, I don't think he did anything at all. And she would just muster up enough strength to pull the covers over her eyes and basically stay there until either A, she fell asleep, or B, the morning rolled around. And then he would usually be gone. So she's got a couple of interesting stories. This happened enough times to maybe count on two hands throughout her life. And a few of the more interesting ones that I thought were really significant as far as some sort of evidence to maybe it not being psychological was that she has a story of when she lived with her mother and her sister, and it happened to her sister pretty often, but they were both really young, I think before they were even early teens. They were probably single digits, So obviously children can influence each other's thoughts, and maybe what they thought they saw was not at all what they actually saw. Her sister and her would go back and forth about how this man would be there in the middle of the night. She would wake up, frozen in fear. Her sister would go, yeah, it happened to me too. But the curious moment comes one day at breakfast when they're talking about her, and they're not really saying it very loudly. I think for whatever reason, they didn't want their mother to know, but she overheard the conversation and drug it out of them. She said, what is it that you guys are talking about? And they said, oh, well, Mom, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously. Well, Mom, there was a man standing over us last night with a brim cap and a duster, and they probably didn't know what dusters were. But her mom says, that happened to me as well. So, I don't know. This person could have been lying to me 100%. But to me, it was terrifying. She said it happened to her multiple times, no matter where she moved, and once even in her 40s, she's sleeping on the sofa, she wakes up, the man's there, she pulls the cover over her face, she finally gets enough strength to scream for her husband, who comes running out into the room where she is, and he goes, what's the big deal? She pulls the cover down, the hatted man is no longer there, her husband's looking at her like she's fucking out of her mind, and, that's pretty much all she wrote. I think those are pretty much the stories that stuck with me, but she always said that it was so terrifying, that she would be frozen with fear. It was the worst thing that ever happened to her in her life. So, fast forward a few years, and I'm probably 18, 19 at this time, and I was told by my mother, some stories about my grandma. And throughout my life, my grandmother passed away when I was really young, probably 5 or 6, and throughout my life I had heard tidbits of stories involving grandma and her feeling that she had been a victim of abduction, meaning like alien abduction. She had a strong feeling that had happened to her. And, this is back, obviously, a very long time ago, with no access to the internet. But what's interesting about my grandmother's experiences is that I'm getting them second, third hand from different people, stories about it, but they still fit categorically to symptoms that many people would consider textbook symptoms of being abducted. So some of those things were seeing bright white, inexplicable lights coming through her window. Some of them would be, sleep paralysis and not being able to move, and these little shadow people coming in the room while she's paralyzed. And, she had experiences. These are stories I've gotten secondhand from people that were with her when they saw, in their own words, large, silent crafts that were hovering in the air, making no noises, didn't look like anything, man-made. And that story, to me, is a little bit more convincing because the person that told me it is very... It doesn't strike me as someone who is into the paranormal or who is superstitious. In fact, it's the only story that I've ever gotten from them involving something like this. But even he had to say that it looked like something he had never seen before, and even to this day, because he told me rather recently, that it looks like something that, man didn't make. So, as I'm getting these stories, my mother tells me, and there was a book that Grandma had read that she felt pretty accurately described the events in her life and described them as symptoms of alien abduction. So it was so moving to her that she insisted that my mother not read this book. And of course, at the period that I was in, it was like 18, 19 years old, I was super into this sort of thing. I loved the idea of something that science couldn't put a finger on. And so I said, what is the name of this book? Can you tell me? Can you tell me? And I don't know if she initially did, but eventually I got it out of her. And it was a book called The Communion by Whitley Strieber. So that book is, or at least from what I understand, the author is not a very credible author, depending on what community you're a part of. If you're a part of a skeptical scientific community, the man is full of bullhickey. Is that a thing? Bullhickey. It's full of bullhickey. And if you're not part of a scientific community and you subscribe more to that paranormal point of view, then I'm sure you would have a different point of view on him. But I thought the book was entertaining, at the least. And one of the things that it did for me was, as I'm reading through this book is basically one man's personal experiences with abductee victims. So through happenstance, he winds up becoming a part of a community of abductee victims. And so he starts to tell you these textbook characteristics of an abductee victim. And they're, spot on what my grandmother was describing. But in that story, in that book, there's mentions of a tall figure with a wide-brimmed cap and the duster and a silhouette of a man, and he's terrifying, and it's sleep paralysis. And I said, holy shit, somehow these terrifying stories, which are some of the most terrifying stories that I've ever heard in my life, are what connects two very important people in my life. So I said, wow, that's really significant. That's really strange. So that leads me on this entire, through the rabbit hole experience where I'm digging and I'm looking for evidence and I'm looking for stories and I'm realizing, like, holy shit, this is, that's when I started to realize it was a worldwide phenomenon, because a little bit of the research online, it wasn't long before I found the name the Hat Man, and I realized that that's what people were calling him, was the Hat Man, because it's really his only defining feature is the duster and the wide brim cap. So I'm realizing this is a very huge thing, thousands and thousands of people's stories, and a big tug of war between whether or not this is a psychological event or a paranormal event. And then there's some people in between who think that the correct psychological state allows you to experience real paranormal events. So, but that is not something that's provable at this point in time, and so you really can't subscribe to that idea. But where the hell was I going with this? Oh, because I was researching it so much, I knew that like the power of suggestion. I was going to experience this solely based off of the fact that I was delving so deeply into it. I knew it was only a matter of time, and I would say that to myself, like, it's gonna happen, and it would spook me out because I didn't want to I didn't want to wake up and be paralyzed and whatever. But after months and months of research, there does come a point in time where I fall asleep and I wake up and I'm sleeping next to my girlfriend at the time. We're shoulder to shoulder, and I wake up and I'm paralyzed. And it is amazing how coherent you are, because it truly is like the mind and nearly all of its facets, excluding physical control over your body, wake up. And so I'm able to think to myself very coherently, oh shit, this is happening. And a couple of more thoughts along the lines of, all right, well, we knew this was going to happen. This is crazy. It's happening. Let's calm down. Let's, look around. And for the few seconds that I was thinking that, I was able to kind of take in my surroundings, and the room was very real. I was very awake. It felt like I was very awake. Not a thing in the room was out of place. Nothing was out of the norm. Just that I was paralyzed, but I wasn't really afraid by that. Until, a shadow moves across my room. Not a man with a hat or anything like that. Just a shadow is casted as if someone was walking past the bedroom window, and the moonlight came in, casted a shadow, and this person travels across my room, which, I'm just going to tell you is impossible. It's impossible because the bed was pushed up against the window. For someone to have casted that shadow, they would have had to have physically walked on me. So it was a hallucination, at the very least. It wasn't really there in a way that we consider real. But it did spook me. And when it did that, I blacked out. And what felt like instantly, I woke up again. And now I'm on the opposite side of the bed. My head is by my girlfriend's feet. and I'm the one who switched positions, and I'm looking into the closet. I'm paralyzed again, and I'm looking into the closet on the other side of the room, and the closet used to have sliding doors. This door is broke. We put a decorative curtain there. There's no light source from in that. There's no switch for a light in that closet. But regardless, this immense, inexplicably bright white light is pouring from the edges of this curtain as if somebody had a construction site going on in that closet, and they used high-powered, lights for nighttime construction. It was just like burned my eyes. And with that, I said, "What the fuck?" And then I passed out again. And then I woke up and everything was fine, everything was normal. But I kind of thought, well, isn't that evidence for this being a psychological event? Because I kind of knew that it was going to happen, and I knew that the reason it would have happened was because of the power of suggestion. Because subliminally, even when when I've turned the computer off and I'm done doing my research, it's still in the back of my mind, and my subconscious mind presented that to me like I thought it would, and I had that experience like I thought I would. So personally, I feel like it kind of leans that way, like it is more of a psychological thing. I don't know why the theme. Well, I guess as I said earlier, it could be explained away with the spaghetti western kind of thing. And then some people say, well, what's the terminology? If you look evil in the face for too long, evil looks back, or if you look somebody gets mad at you, they don't like you looking at them. Fucking that. I said, hey, I poked a tiger in the ass, and the tiger turned around and fucking bit me. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But I've got a lot more stories. Not a lot more, but I've got some more stories if you guys are interested. And I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say. What you've experienced, what your theories are, all that stuff. So leave your response in the comments below, and let's talk about it. To be honest, there's not much to talk about. It always leads to this dead-end wall where everyone goes, well, shit, it's either psychological or it's the devil. And you really have no real way of defining that. But fucking let's talk about it anyway. I want to hear your stories. Let me know in the comments below. And I got one video, but you could subscribe and shit. That'd be cool. Peace out.